she handed me a mop at 7 in the morning. Not a good morning, not a cup of tea, just a mop, and a look that said she expected me to be grateful for it. I didn't say anything. I just took it. Because that's what love does sometimes. It stays quiet, keeps going, and trusts that the truth will show itself when the time is right. My name is Amara, and this is the story of the house that changed everything. I met Daniel 3 years before any of this began. He was working at a small engineering firm. I was finishing my second degree in property law. We fell in love the way quiet people do. Slowly, then all at once. He was gentle, honest, and kind in a way that felt rare. When he proposed, I said yes before he finished the sentence. His mother, Margaret, was a different story. From the moment Daniel brought me home for the first time, she looked at me the way people look at a stain on a white shirt. Not with cruelty exactly, but with a careful, measuring kind of disappointment. I was not what she had imagined for her son. I didn't come from money. My parents were retired teachers in a small town 3 hours away. I drove an old car. I wore modest clothes. I didn't talk about vacations or investments or the right neighborhoods. In Margaret's world, these things mattered. She never said anything openly cruel. That wasn't her style. It was quieter than that. It was the way she'd sigh when she saw my cooking. The way she'd say, "Daniel worked so hard today," while looking at me, as if to say, "And what did you do?" It was the chores she'd leave undone until I arrived at their home, then mention them the moment I walked through the door. The windows needed cleaning. The guest bathroom tiles had gone gray. Had I noticed the garden was getting out of hand? Daniel noticed. He would say, "Mom, you can't keep doing this." She would smile and say she was just trying to keep things running. He loved her. I loved him. So I held my peace. What Margaret didn't know, what I had never felt the need to announce, was that for the past 2 years, quietly and carefully, I had been saving. Not just saving, investing. Working with a property attorney friend to identify undervalued homes in a developing part of the city. Spending my evenings studying market trends, reviewing deeds, reading zoning reports. My boring law background, as Margaret once called it, had been quietly building something real. I had purchased a property. Not just any property. A spacious, well-located home in a neighborhood that had just been approved for major development. The kind of approval that doubles land value overnight. I hadn't told Daniel yet because I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to hand him a future, not just a promise. The deed was in my name, Amara Osei. In full. The incident that broke everything open happened on a Sunday. Margaret had come to stay with us for the week. Daniel had been called into work early, and it was just the two of us at the house by 8 in the morning. She had made herself tea, just herself, and was reading a magazine when she looked up and said, without looking at me fully, "The floors need doing. There's a mop in the hall cupboard." Just like that. I stood there for a moment. I thought of my mother, who taught 30 years of primary school and mopped no one's floors but her own. I thought of the nights I had stayed up reading land titles while Margaret assumed I was doing nothing important. I thought of the quiet patience I had carried for 3 years like a smooth stone in my chest. And then I went and got the mop. Not because she had the right to ask, but because I had made a decision long before that morning that my character would not be shaped by how I was treated. It would be shaped by who I chose to be. But something shifted in me that day. That evening, when Daniel came home, I asked him if we could sit down together, all three of us. There was something I had been waiting to share, and I thought now was the right time. Margaret looked mildly curious. Daniel looked a little nervous, the way husbands do when their wives use the phrase, "sit down together." I went to the bedroom and came back with a folder. Inside were the property documents, the deed, the valuation reports, and a letter from the development office confirming the zoning change. I placed them on the table. Daniel picked up the deed first. His eyes moved across the page. Then they went still. He looked up at me. His voice was soft. He said, "Amara, when did you do this?" "Over the past 2 years," I said. "I wanted it to be yours too. Ours." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand, and I could see something in his eyes that looked like wonder. Margaret had picked up the valuation report. Her reading glasses were on. Her finger moved slowly down the page. The address, the estimated market value, the projected appreciation. Then she found the deed itself. She read the name at the top, Amara Osei. She set the papers down very carefully, the way you set something down when your hands have gone a little unsteady. The room was quiet. I didn't feel triumph. I want to be clear about that. What I felt was something closer to grief. A grief for all the mornings I had been handed a mop instead of a good morning. A grief for the version of Margaret that might have known me differently if she had looked just a little closer, a little sooner. She didn't speak for a long while. When she finally did, her voice was different, smaller. She said, "I didn't know." "I know," I said gently. "You weren't meant to. But I hope now that you do, things can be different between us." She looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time. And I saw something move across her face that I had never seen there before. Not shame exactly, something more honest than shame. Something like the slow, quiet rearranging of a world she had built on assumptions. She picked up her teacup, put it down. Then she said, "I owe you an apology. More than one." Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. I told her the apology was accepted. Not because everything was suddenly fine. Healing doesn't happen in a single sentence. But because I had not carried my patience this far just to trade it in for bitterness at the finish line. In the months that followed, something did change between Margaret and me. Not all at once, not perfectly, but genuinely. She started asking about my work. She made tea for both of us. One afternoon she called, just to talk. No tasks, no requests, just conversation. It was a small thing, but small things are where real change lives. We moved into the house that spring. Daniel painted the front door a deep blue. His mother planted something in the garden, without being asked. I stood in the kitchen on the first morning and thought about all the mops and silences and careful, patient days that had brought me to this room, in this home, with this life. And I thought, truth doesn't need to rush. It just needs to stay. Sometimes, the people who underestimate you are not cruel. They are simply looking in the wrong direction. And the most powerful thing you can do is not prove them wrong loudly, but live your truth so steadily that they eventually have no choice but to see it. If this story touched something in you today, share it with someone who's been quietly carrying their worth without needing to announce it. Because some of the most remarkable people in the world are the ones you'd never expect, until you see their name on the deed.